Okay, we'd like to welcome Max Homa to the interview room here at the Arnold Palmer Invitational 2023. Welcome, Max. You just played in the Pro-Am. You've had 3 trips around this tournament already, top 25 in each. Just thoughts on the golf course. I'm curious to know, with 3 good finishes, what your thoughts are on Bay Hill.
Yeah, it's a lovely layout. It requires really good ball striking. I think, you look at people who've had great success here, Tiger, Rory, obviously tremendous ball strikers, great iron players especially. You need to be in the fairway this week. The rough isn't quite as long as it was the last couple of years, but it's all cut and grown into the grain, so there's not much you can do from these lies. But when you are in the fairway, I feel like if you're on and if you're pretty precise with your irons, I feel like you can almost sleepwalk your way to a good round, but there's danger lurking everywhere. The unique thing that this golf course has is how firm and fast the greens get as the week goes on. They're already pretty spicy out there, and I like that. I think it tests quality of strike, tests patience. I always think about a years-long tour as we are. It needs variety, and I think some soft golf courses are okay. And then we have some medium, and then this one, which is a bit more extreme on the firm side. So I'd like that this fits in the schedule. It's an elevated event now, or a designated event now. So I think that it's good that we have an event like this. That I think it tests, as much as it tests your physical skills, it tests your mental skills as well.
Before we take some questions, just you're number 2 in the FedEx Cup after a couple of wins this season already, and you're coming in here off a runner-up finish at the Genesis. How nice was it for you to have a refreshing, relaxing week last week and get prepared for this week?
It was nice. I was pretty spent. I had never been up at the top of a leaderboard for that long before. All 4 days, played the final 2 rounds in the last group, so it was quite exhausting. So it was nice to get home, get refreshed, spend some time with my family, work on my game, and get back out here. So it's nice to be back working again. I do always miss competition when I'm home, but every once in a while you do need a little bit of kind of a reality check. Get back to changing diapers and getting to hang out with my wife and just go back to normalcy. So it was nice. It was a nice refreshing break.
All right. If you have questions, just raise your hand and we'll get you a microphone, and we'll start over here with Gary.
Congrats on your good play and your excellent diaper changing. You may have overheard Scotty talking a little bit about this new schedule, cutting the elevated events to 70, 78 players, no cuts. He was talking about there's more avenues for players to get out here, but it seems like those avenues are smaller than ever. How do you feel about this proposal, and is it different than maybe how you would have felt about it 5 or 6 years ago when you were maybe, wouldn't have been in the top 50 or 70?
I love the new changes. I could rant on this for a while, which I might. The reason I wanted to join the Player Advisory Council, which is what I'm on now and was on a bit last year, is because I think I do provide a unique perspective as, in 2017, 2018, I guess I've just seen all kind of levels of professional golf between the Korn Ferry and the PGA Tour. And I believed in this back then, and I believe in this now. I didn't maybe see exactly what is being done. I'm not quite smart enough to have planned this one out, but the product is important. I think it's easy to frame these changes as a way to put more money in the top players' pockets, but it has been made to make it easier and more fun for the fans. I know it's low-hanging fruit to jump on. Oh, this is just a money grab. This is to make it better for the fans. It is a guarantee on who will be at events, more or less, and leaning more on the more there. It is more opportunity for the top players to battle it out late on Sundays, which you look back at times of Phil and Tiger, the 2 best players, growing up for me watching, and they had like maybe 2 real battles. So we're going to have more of that. We just had Scotty and John battle it out in Phoenix, and that was awesome. 2 of the 3 best players in the world going at it. So I think that's great. I understand the sentiment you brought up about maybe the avenue's getting smaller, but the prize is much larger. So I'm not so sure I agree with the kind of negative connotation of that. The non-designated events are the same purses with, I mean, on paper, weaker fields. So financially, that doesn't change a whole lot. And there's a lot of room for growth throughout that. You can play your way into the designated events and go from playing an event for the exact same amount of money to playing it for significantly more amount of money with a 2-week good golf stretch or a win or something like that. Cutting the field sizes down, I know is, I just finished my pro and went on my phone briefly before I came in here, and I saw quite a bit of frustration, some from players, some from fans, that the fields are small. But I think the part that's frustrating, and maybe the part that just simply might be misunderstood, is that if we made these fields very large in these designated events, it would ruin non-designated events that have been staples of the PGA Tour, that go to cities that people love watching these events with their families. It would ruin them. That no one would play in half of them because it would no longer fit your schedule by any means. So I think that the tour has done a great job of looking into that and seeing that, this would be a great number to cut to make sure that we still have competitive events that are non-designated while keeping the sponsors and the fans happy with the parity and some of the, maybe not the top 50 big names, but big names, big guys everybody has watched play golf, win golf tournaments, and excel at this game still in those fields. So I think that is an important distinction to make before just jumping on something negative.
Just to follow up, the things you say that would ruin some of these events is what built the tour to get to where it is now.
I'm sorry?
The things you mentioned that you say would ruin some of these events where everybody's not going to play them, that's what the tour was built on to get to this point where we're at now.
Okay, although that's not a question, I will...
Well, I just wanted to, could you expand on that? How do you think it would ruin the events? Because that's how it's been done in the past. And
Because the bottom 30 guys are going to be people like, and I'm going to say it because he works for the tour, Jason Gore will be playing in a PGA Tour events. And we always joke with him, like, that's clearly not something we want. There was an event last year, and I'm not going to use the name of the player, but it was a kind of a joke, a running joke that this guy is playing in a golf tournament. He is a professional golfer. He's not a practicing professional golfer anymore. Those people will be in a ton of the events. And now the sponsors have to say, well, do we want the, not quite a third of the field, but a chunk of the field is guys that won an event years and years ago that have jobs or have retired well before that. I understand your point that's what the tour was built on, but the tour had, in my opinion, a problem in the sense that 30% of the top 50 players on this tour were playing against each other week in and week out. So they looked at something that was a negative, a deficiency, and said, okay, we want more of the top guys playing against each other for the fans, for entertainment. That's not a good look, that the only time you'll see the best players in the world teeing it up against each other is the players in the majors. It dilutes the other, 42 weeks that we play? That's a lot of weeks that you're watching. You're hoping a lot. You're hoping a lot for a phenomenal leaderboard. And I don't mean phenomenal. I think everyone out here is a tremendous golfer, but we know that fans have attached themselves to the Rorys, to the Johns, to the Scotties, to the Jordans, to the Justins. They're our household names, and most of us are not a household name. So, yes, that's what it was built on, but it had also gotten bigger and bigger and more weeks and more playing opportunities, and that just thins it out throughout the year. If we had 15 events, it would be a sprint, and people would play all 15 of those, and you would see the same guys going at it week in and week out, and it would have shrunk. It would have made the field size might have been the same, but it would have shrunk who got into each event. We're keeping an idea that people will still get to play the same amount of events and a lot of the same events that they typically would, but there's just kind of brackets on it, and there's tons of room for growth for those guys. I almost think that some of these questions, in the sense that, it's not letting as many people in, is doing them a disservice. They can play great and get in, and it's only room for growth. They're not financially taking a back seat to what has already been in place. So I see all of this as a positive. I understand gripes, but at times I've had gripes too. And once you sit down with an executive of the tour, Jay, who has been great for me to kind of bounce complaints off of, and then him come back to me with a well thought out and also measured answer as something he's researched, I can be like, oh yeah, I am wrong. I thought maybe I wasn't settled on 70 people. I was like, that sounds like not enough. But when he said, well, if you make it 100, these other events are going to struggle and then potentially go away, and then we'd be sitting here and it would somehow be his fault or our fault that an event that you found as a classic, traditional tournament is no longer in existence. And I think this plan is holding up everything with, like I said, a lot of room for growth for the 100th on the FedEx Cup at the end of this year.
Okay. Do you need a break before the next?
No, I'm good. Sorry, guys. I think
checking.
A lot, and you just heard my brain spill out.
You kept your promise, that's for sure. We're going to go in the back of the room over here.
Trying to remember my question. Hi, Max.
Hi.
You were clearly disappointed and a bit emotional after the loss at Riviera. And I'm wondering, you mentioned a few minutes ago about not having been in that position for 4 days. What were your takeaways mentally as you were reflecting on that Sunday and the whole week?
Yeah, I was most proud of my week mentally. Anytime you have the lead after Thursday, it's just a really hard position to stay in. I thought I kept my wits about me for the whole week. I just didn't drive the ball well enough on the weekend, especially the back nine on Sunday, to give myself opportunities to catch John. But overall, obviously, I was really excited and proud of how I played and how I thought. And it's just a learning experience. It hurt at the time, and it hurts a bit now, but you just have to put yourself in position as often as you possibly can, and that's how you start to clip off wins at a higher rate. That was faster.
Go to Jeff in the middle.
Max, this isn't an access question. It's more about a player getting from point A to point B. So we got introduced to Eric Cole last week. I'm sure he would aspire to have a path like you've had, where you get out on tour, you pay your dues, you struggled a little bit, then you win, and now you've broken through to be a top player in the world. As you look back at your own path, what's the biggest thing that got you from that point A to where you stand today?
I say faith in a plan. I think it's easy to make a plan. I think it's hard to stick to a plan. I thought I made a plan, and I thought it was a well thought out plan. It wasn't just a half-assed plan. It was a well thought out plan, and I thought I made one, and I was like, I'm going to stick to this and see where it gets me. And I don't know the end date on this, but I'm gonna put one foot in front of the other until I make it to where I want to be. So I think that was a big staple of mine, of what I did to make sure that I got where I wanted to go.
Was it really detailed, or was it kind of just general? Yeah.
It was very general. I think it actually gets more detailed as you get better or more successful in the game. I think when you're struggling or you're kind of making ends meet, it's easier to make it general and you'll see more success right away. It's harder as you get closer to the top to find these tiny incremental things you need to do to slowly climb up because everybody else is doing that too,
Just one last one. As a fellow player, do you enjoy seeing a story like that, a kid you might not have known? Or?
Yeah, of course. Every week with the Monday qualifying, I think that's awesome. You see events. I think that also brings the great storyline. Not to harp back on what I ranted on clearly far too long, but we go from Riviera, where you have a lot of the guys who might be more household names are clearly not struggling as much, and then you go to an event that would be considered, even just the word undesignated makes it seem almost lesser, and you have this unbelievable story of Chris Kirk, who's a tremendous golfer and has had a tremendous career, but he's gone through his struggles openly, battling against Eric Cole, who has taken him a while to make his presence known out here, and you have Monday qualifier, who is like, I think he cashed a huge check, and now his life is like that storyline is awesome, and getting to see that versus the paradox between that and the other, I think that's important for sport, and it's an awesome opportunity that we, and I mean myself as a fan, gets to watch that. So I love watching that. That's the beauty of this game. You're 1 week away from changing your life when you're a professional golfer.
Okay, we'll come across to Kathy on the left.
Hello. First of all, never feel badly about coming in here and just talking. Okay,
Okay.
We like that. What happens with over time? You have guys who have won majors and they get 5-year exemptions for that, and with the players, I guess it's 3-year exemptions to some things, but 5 for tour events. Pretty soon, that's 25 players who every year are probably going to be in a designated situation. How do they play badly enough to not be in a designated tournament?
I'm not sure. You should probably. I mean, Jay knows much more about this than I. I'm not in every nook and cranny of this, or I don't know all of the details. But I would assume that you could still get bumped down to the non-designated events after a year if you don't remain in the top 50. However,
On points?
Off points, I would assume.
Okay.
But so I don't think that you're locked in for those 5 years, 3 years, whatever, in the designated events. But I mean, just.
I realize that's kind of in the weeds.
Yeah,
All
I'm
of a sudden
not. I don't want to speak on something I'm not 100% sure on it,
Okay.
just in case. But that would be my guess.
Okay, we'll come to Mark in the front right here.
Hey, Max. We just had, obviously, Scotty in here a moment ago, and he's had an amazing run in the last year plus. I'm curious, A, what your impression of where he's taken this in such a short period of time has been. And as a follow-up, you've been on a fantastic run as well yourself. And what is the secret, for lack of a better word, of the dynamic of trying to just keep that rolling? You know what I mean? With
Yeah.
Scotty has, you know.
Yeah, Scotty did some unprecedented last year. I think he went from his first win to #1 in the world faster than anybody had ever done it. So he's obviously on a pretty unprecedented tear and has kept it going. Scotty was a great player before he won his first one, and he's a more accomplished one now. But I played with him at Sea Island last year at the RSM before he had won his first one, and I had never gotten to see his game up close. I'd heard he was tremendous. I think he was already a top 20 in the world player without winning yet, and I walked away from that being like, yep, this makes sense. You know, you can never guess someone's going to win. What has it been 5 times in the last maybe a year in a major, and contends in mostly every major. So I'm not going to say I could have sat here and said, oh, that's definitely going to happen, but you could see it. These things aren't flash in the pan when it comes to getting up that high. So for me, I think resting on that, knowing that this isn't a flash in the pan, this takes more than a couple good weeks. This takes years of steadily improving and little wins here and there, and then some big wins. So I think you just keep doing what you're doing. I think that's what he's been doing, and I think he knew before he won one that he was a champion, and now he obviously knows he's a champion.
Okay, we've got 3 or 4 more lined up. We'll go Bob, Taylor, and then back in the front for Doug.
Max, are you one of those guys that goes to Augusta early? And have you ever gone and stayed on site overnight, done the whole cabin thing, and just enjoyed the experience? If not, are you hoping to do that at some point?
I have never stayed there, no. But I did go last year with Taylor Gooch. We went actually the weekend prior to Bay Hill, and we went for 2 rounds, and it was fun. I'm not probably going to do that too often. We wanted to go kind of get the pre-Masters jitters out of the way more so. It's funny, the course, at different times of the year, it doesn't play quite as fast. So I didn't really learn a lot about the course, but it was nice to get comfortable. I'd played there a couple times, but it's nice to get comfortable being there, almost have memories. I've got memory with one of my best friends now, getting to walk that place 2 days with, not all the craziness, not the competition, just having some fun at the coolest golf course you could ever imagine. So I'm sure I'll go back and do it again, but this year I will not be.
We'll go way in the back to Taylor, way in the back.
How did your experience at Genesis, being in contention with your family and friends in the crowd, prepare you for the U.S. Open coming up at LA Country Club? It being in your hometown, did you think it adds some extra motivation?
Yeah, absolutely. I love playing in California, obviously. I love playing in front of my friends and family. I actually thought it was a good practice, and this was the first year I've gone there probably as a semi-favorite, so there was a lot more attention just on my phone from obviously my friends and family, but people who you would, maybe a little bit more distant friends. So I realized that for the U.S. Open, I'm going to, kind of have my phone down a bit more and not be so worried about making sure everyone's getting there and getting tickets and doing all these things, as obviously the U.S. Open and majors alike always bring a lot more of that. Those responsibilities, I learned I probably got to keep that a bit tighter for a major, especially on a golf course that we don't play every year, so it's going to be a lot more work. So, but yeah, I just think having that support is always a positive. So I would love for everybody to be out there. I'm just going to make sure that my attention is on the golf and, my very close circle, small circle.
Down the front with Doug.
We'll end this on a really bad hypothetical, but do you think there's a way to equate the stress someone feels trying to stay in that top 50 next year compared with previously trying to keep your card, stay in the 125?
Great question. This is another thing that I think is going to be a fun thing to watch. It is going to be hard. We are now playing against the best players every week. It is a major in a way, or a major field every single week. So I was talking with a player last week that, in this exact moment is not in these designated events. And he had mentioned how it was nice playing the Honda, knowing that Jon Rahm is not there. That is a nice feeling right now. If Jon Rahm wasn't there in LA, I would have clipped off my second one there, and I'd be a happy, happy man. So you got to go beat these guys every week. So it's going to be hard. It's going to be stressful, and it almost pre-stressful, like in the off season, thinking, "Dang, I got to get my stuff together," because it's not like these other guys have very many bad weeks. You're competing against the elite every day. Sure, you could say that the no cut takes some stress off of you because of, I guess, knowing you're going to get paid. But at the end of the day, I don't think anybody has gotten to where they have gotten to be in these designated events because they focus on how much money they make. They do it because they have focused on winning and being great and excelling and making it to the top of their game. So I think it will be a new and improved challenge. I think it's important that we all test each other against one another each week. And if you don't, you will get pushed aside and have to work your way back up. So I think it will be a different kind of stress that we haven't had before, but I do think it will be stressful.
And lastly, is it fair to say we're not here today without Liv?
Yeah, possibly. I would have hoped that we would have gotten here at some point. So I don't know about that. But yeah, it does seem like the emergence of Liv forced us as players and the executives of the PGA Tour to just look at their product. I think there are things that they've done. They got to make something from scratch, which is a lot easier than us building something that has been around for so long, that's been on the shoulders of someone like Arnold Palmer, who's built a lot of what we do today. They don't have to deal with tradition, so they got to just kind of set out a piece of paper and say, what should we do? And I think one of the things that they have that's great that this will provide now is a guaranteed product. You know who's going to be at each event. I think that's important for fans, especially the ones who come to the events, who are on site, because hey, if I come if I go to Mexico for my Copa, Dustin Johnson will be at that golf tournament. Dustin Johnson's my favorite golfer, and I want to see Dustin Johnson in person. Whereas some other events, it's how we've done it in the past, it's tricky. I joke that, my friend Steven is a humongous Rory McIlroy fan, and I got tired of listening to, is Rory going to play in the event? I was thinking you should know if he's going to be in an event. Just like Rory said about Tom Brady, when he turns on a Bucs game, he knows he's going to get to watch Tom Brady play football. So I don't think we would be here as soon without Liv, but I would hope that at some point we would have looked at this and said, hey, there might be a better way to do it.
One last one. Go ahead, Matt.
Max, I've heard you talk quite a bit about the work you've done with Mark recently, physically and mentally, some of the dividends that's paid. I'm wondering if you have a primary swing thought, and if you do, what is it?
Rhythm to me has always been a pretty obvious focus, especially when I'm playing in a competition. It's hard to have a lot of swing thoughts that are super technical. That one is, for me, when I get quick in my transition, a lot of things go wrong real fast. And when I stay patient and stay kind of within my pacing of my swing, I tend to improve the way my body moves and where the club goes. So we work on little things here and there, but that one seems to be the constant.
All right. Max, we appreciate your time. Thanks for an engaging press conference, and good luck this week.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.